Let the grace of God bless man and every woman in this land. Stay strong, keep your faith alive. Whatever comes to meet us, know the darkness won't defeat us. Stay strong and keep your faith alive.
We're going to talk a little bit about fire, but before we even get to talk about the element fire, maybe I'll just say one or two things about fire, Grandfather Fire, and then would you like to talk about using smoke?
A little bit.
Okay. So speaking about the same Native American church, don't try this at home, but I'd gone to a Native American church ceremony where we stay up in the teepee all night and pray around the sacred fire with the traditional songs and traditional drumming and traditional ritual. And in that church, the sacrament in the Native American church is a little bit of peyote. And I imbibed of the sacrament. And I forgot that I had a client at like 8 or 9 the next morning after church, after being up all night in the church praying, enjoying that energy and a prayer service. And I went to work on this guy, and I didn't realize that I was a bit peyoteed up, as we say, and I was in an altered state of consciousness. And so I began the session with some sacred evergreen, with some cedar, and I lit the sacred evergreen, and I could hear the sacred evergreen singing. I could hear that this fire was interdimensional, and I could hear, because of the peyote, I could hear the purity of the fire, and it's singing in this other dimension. I could hear the ultrasonic sounds of the sacred evergreen as it burned. Okay, so one of the places I visited in India is Shanti Kunj, where they practice yagna therapy. They practice healing through fire ritual. And you go in there and the doctors assess you and they decide whether to give you homeopathy, herbology, or whether fire ceremony. So the brilliant Indian scientists studied this, and they discovered that the fire cleansed your aura in particular ways that resonated with particular areas of your subtle body, and that the mantras affected the vibrations that were entrained with the fire. The fire empowered these mantras and that could focus on and entrained and resonated with different parts of your subtle body. And then the different substances that you threw in the fire resonated at different ultrasonic vibrations, that the rice and the kumkum and the ghee and the other herbs that you threw in there each had their own vibration, which entrained with different elements of your subtle body. So they've been developing this for thousands of years. Some of the priests who developed the system lived very, very pure lives where they owned nothing. They lived in the forest in the high Himalayas for generations, doing nothing but living yoga. So they had tremendous sensitivity to subtle energy and developed things like this yagna therapy. So I just wanted to point out that fire is this interdimensional portal, that there's little, like in Scandinavia, during the dark of winter, they have candelabras that are all candles. Can you imagine going into a home where every night in the living room where you hang out, you have this your light is the light from candles, that these candles are singing this ultrasonic song and purifying your home and purifying your aura. So that in cultures like in Scandinavia, where they've had thousands of years of experience with the depths of winter, we want to understand for our emotional support and emotional healing, the sound and the blessings, the purity of candles, and probably a tallow candle if you can get it, is probably better than the, yeah. So I'll just leave us with that thought. My dear wife, Chela Bear, is a good witch. She's been doing these things for a long time with a beautiful, wise and loving heart. And so I turn things over to my sage wife.
That's quite an introduction. Okay. Well, Bruce asked me to bring out my my fan and my cedar. When we first started Heartwood, how many years ago was that?
In 1978,
Yeah.
81.
We went up there with some folks, some teachers, and some people who were going to live there and work with us, and we had a dream, but we had no idea what we were doing.
For those of you, Heartwood is a utopian community that had a good 20 plus year run, and still going in many important ways. But
we were a very significant healing arts school,
and was a nationally accredited healing arts school in our heyday,
and an amazing experience for anyone who got to walk on that land. So we really didn't know what we were doing, as I was saying, and in terms of taking care of the land and bringing people up there to study and getting along with each other, and we were floundering, really. And the thing that saved us, the miracle that saved us, was we were so fortunate that Native American people came and taught us how to pray together. And it just changed everything for us, because it turned us into a community, it turned us into a tribe, really. And probably the most important thing that they taught us was the use of cedar. And probably a lot of you are familiar with that practice of using cedar. And so it's a big part of the ritual in many Native American prayer services. And then many of us began to use it in our homes and in our lives, in our everyday life. It actually is, it's not just a medicine, it's really a way of life, because for many of us, it just became what we did for whatever reason, whether it was illness or need or problems or
sending somebody away with some good energy.
Right, or clearing your mind of thoughts that you didn't want, or if you heard bad news, you wanted to pray for somebody, but you also wanted to protect yourself from whatever bad news you might have heard. And quite often we would cedar out the spaces we were in. Many times if we were starting a meeting, a business meeting or whatever, we would burn cedar to lighten it up and clear out the room. And so for so many reasons, we came to depend on cedar. And this is a branch of, there's, in a very simple way, there's two kinds of cedars that we talk about. There's round cedar and flat cedar, and this is a branch from a round cedar. And we would harvest the cedar in a reverent way with prayer, and then we would let it dry, and then we would burn it. So when we wanted to say a prayer or ask for something or offer something, we would pray, and then we would burn cedar.
Rutherford used to say, Rutherford was one of the elders who took care of us in the early days. He used to say that the cedar was like the Christ light, that there was nothing that couldn't be forgiven through the grace, the energy, the field that.
And then we offer it. Offer it to our beloveds. Can you see? And the person would 4 times.
I like to bring it in my throat. Thank you. Let me hold it for you, dear. Now, my wife's doing it the correct way.
What do you mean?
Well, I'm just goofing around. You always do things right.
Well, we have a way that Rutherford taught us.
Oh,
women do it this way and men do it this way. And
okay.
but
Can you do that again and I'll aim the camera? Okay. So I'm going to try to follow you with the camera.
Sacred evergreen. Thank you. Please bless this election day and let everything go well. Let's have a peaceful transition. Oh. So women take it from their center and out to the extremity, then do it the opposite way. This is just in this particular teaching. But, and I forgot. When it's really nice when we have the fire going and then we can pull a coal out of the stove and sprinkle the cedar on the coal. And in ritual, many of us have our fans, and we will use a fan in the teepee, and we'll. So then we're bringing the air element in as well. So you're kneeling on the earth, facing the fire, burning cedar.
Or facing the east if you don't have a fire.
This is for all of you. Somehow it might go through our digital world.
Good. Thank you.
And you might all be blessed. Whatever it is you need might come to you in a good way.
For all our relations.
For all our relations.
Thank you so much. Thank you. These sacred evergreen are like this. In our understanding, the subtle is the cause and the physical is the effect. So these are working ways of working with the subtle body and purifying your etheric body, your energy body. Sage in particular, here's some white sage, but there are many, many, many different kinds of sages all over the world. This is what she looks like, and then they're wrapped like so. Sage resonates with your etheric body in particular, and ether mediates between the subtle universal elements and the gross material elements. Of ether is the nucleus of your etheric body. So whenever someone is cedering off an area, or you were working or smudging an area, you want to really bring that energy towards your sternum and throat in particular, and also to really smell it, to really take it in, because through the schneiderian membrane, it just resonates right up to the pineal gland and to the higher energy centers. Traditional people, a tremendous amount of their, magical or ritual or superstitious life revolved around understanding that this is the nucleus of your etheric body, that the sternum, the tip of the sternum. So traditionally you wore a talisman of some sort right here. You get that? So that energy went right into your core, right into this throat chakra, and then I feel, thymus, okay? So that So traditionally, a healer was an astrologer or other psychic who could really understand what was missing from your field or what was troubled in your field. And traditionally, the astrologer would just see it in your chart that these planets were debilitated or challenged in some way. And so during a time when those planets or those forces were exalted under those stars and with appropriate incantation, and maybe with a jewel or stone that represent the crystallization of those energies, at an auspicious time, impregnate that with their intention and give that to you to wear as a talisman right here. You get how many traditional people wear that talisman there? Will wear a rosary, and again with that meru, with that central bead there, right over. Okay, so I want you to think of this area. There are systems in Bhakti Yoga and in esoteric practices. Even in Zen, you end up focused in your etheric body, just right in this area, 12 finger widths above the, in front of the sternum. That, in fact, some sages say your spiritual heart is a little to the right of there. And many of you can feel that spiritual heart in some ways. So you want to really understand working with the etheric body. And one of the powerful ways that we work with the etheric body is the sacred evergreen. Sage, cedar is the sacred evergreen. And then we also use sage and sweetgrass to bless people. Again, each of these has a unique vibration that's very pure and entrains and purifies your energy field in important ways. So we've been talking a little bit about fire and I guess air by talking about smoke. And again, this just a little bit, there's so much more that we can be saying about all these things. I'm just beginning to touch on them. So when we talk about air, I like to bring sunshine in here. Someone gives you clothing or a tarot deck or an I Ching. You want to take that tarot deck and take some clothespins and hang it up in the sunshine. Nothing will purify like sunshine and fresh air. Or anytime anyone gives you clothing, it's not enough to just wash it. You want to really, in terms of psychic protection, you want to hang that clothing out in the fresh air. And if possible, you want to spend your time or work in a space that gets that sunshine each day for part of the day, and that has an exchange of air. Because it's important to understand when we say prana, that simple word prana, oh my God, what are we reducing into this poor word? Pra means to go forth breath, that this is the breath of life. You know, in a sense, it's touched, it is the breath that is the lips of the goddess, embracing you as a being and kissing you from breath to breath with this precious, precious gift of life. So whatever, ever ways we can have that air in our life. In traditional healing, they did sun baths and air baths, and also the best time is 11 to 1. If you have a dog or any other animal, they bathe in that warm sun and store up the energy of the sun and the subtle energy of the sun every opportunity that they have. As we talk about using the elements. So if you're going to do smudging, they really emphasize a lot of smoke. Again, in anybody that does any kind of ritual, they cast a sacred circle, they invoke Ganesha, one or the other, and then they light fire, candles. Again, the candles are singing a song that purifies the space powerfully. Most physical fire is the most physical of the elements in a sense. Fire is transformational energy. So lighting that fire really illuminates the space. The whole space becomes entrained with the auric field of fire, which is so close to life itself and consciousness itself. So such a powerful element. So that we always want to be honoring and working with Grandfather Fire. Now you want to understand that fire has a polarity, that there's the blue flame of the feminine fire, which is cooling, that we cook with and nourish ourselves with, propane, blue gas. There's the red flame of the wooden fire, the grandfather fire, that is a much different kind of warmth. If you have a wood stove, it's much different than if you have forced air heat or electric heat. You hear that? That these sources of fire make big differences in the energy around you. And then there's the violet flame. And we even saw that when the Himalayan, what's the most sacred wood in the Himalayas? What was that wood? Maybe I'll remember. But we saw a wood that was it the Ashok? We saw a Himalayan wood. It was a form of cedar. It was a form of cedar, and it burned green. It burned this beautiful bright green, and like manzanita burns this beautiful violet and makes a violet ray flame. That's a very special flame. So as you dance with grandfather, or even in this case, the feminine flame, grandmother fire, in this case, the feminine aspect of fire, and then the violet flame, which is a higher dimension of fire and communes with a higher intelligence, realize that that's available to you too. And there's just all sorts of ways that can be cultivated as we interact with this sacred element, this interdimensional portal that we call grandfather fire. There was one other aspect of fire that I wanted to, well, maybe it'll come by as I think and talk about these things. So lots of smoke. The smoke carries your prayers to the Creator. The smoke fills this etheric space with the grace of the cedar, the sacred evergreen, sage, and these other substances. Some of you are really sensitive in what you're aware of, and I just invite you to open and listen to these elemental intelligences, and listen clairvoyantly, not just with your ears or your mind, but listen with all of your bodily intelligence open, and see what these elementals have to share with you and teach you. This is Mataji Vanamali.
ॐ त्र्यम्बकं यजामहे सुगन्धिं पुष्टिवर्धनम् उर्वारुकमिव बन्धनात् मृत्योर्मुक्षीयमामृतात् ॐ त्र्यम्बकं यजामहे सुगन्धिं पुष्टिवर्धनम् उर्वारुकमिव बन्धनात् मृत्योर्मुक्षीयमामृतात् ॐ त्र्यम्बकं यजामहे सुगन्धिं पुष्टिवर्धनम् उर्वारुकमिव बन्धनात् मृत्योर्मुक्षीयमामृतात् ॐ त्र्यम्बकं यजामहे सुगन्धिं पुष्टिवर्धनम् उर्वारुकमिव बन्धनात् अमृतात् ॐ त्र्यम्बकं यजामहे सुगन्धिं पुष्टिवर्धनम् उर्वारुकमिव बन्धनात् मृत्योर्मुक्षीयमामृतात्
Om, 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 Om. The meaning of Om. Om is the holy word, the the root of everything, the divine intelligence that is the seed of infinite creations. They say that all of this is consciousness witnessing its majesty, its glory, its splendor, its potency. So Om is all of that mystery, all of that potency. Yes, the seed, just like a tiny bit of semen, a tiny ovum gives birth to this incredible being called you. Om is this tiny bit of mystery that gives birth to infinite universes. Trambakam is a three-eyed one of the infinite names of Lord Shiva. Shiva means auspicious, and Shiva is the experience of being in a body, the auspiciousness of being in a body. So Om to Trambakam, just put together all in one like that, the three-eyed one. And the prayer says, may I drop into the arms of Lord Shiva like a ripe gourd falling off the vine. Okay, so the meaning of the prayer is, may I drop into the arms of the mystery like a ripened gourd drops from the vine. So let's get up and dance as we chant Om Trambakam Yajamahe Sukunding Pushti Vardhanam Orvarukameva Bandhanam Mrityor Mukshi Mamritat. Mrityor death, Mukshi liberation, Mamritat into the nectar of immortality. So may I drop into your arms like a ripe gourd, cheating death and ascending into liberation and the nectar of immortality. And this beautiful picture of Shiva in his feminine aspect is Shakti, his mother Kali, with a garland of skulls, a garland of egos, and arms representing greed, wearing greed. Greed is dead at her waist. Egos are something she laughs at. In any case, in these traditions, they have these fierce protectors, and you need a fierce protector. You need a Rudra, you need a Kali, because our minds are so fucked up. And we need these powerful, scary, positive, divine forces to protect us against the fruit of our wounded and bitter and angry and vulnerable minds. So let us get up and dance as we chant that we may just be in the arms of liberation and the nectar of immortality, that this may be the divining characteristic of our time here on earth.
Om Trayambakam Yajamate Purvarukamiva bandhana Vijormukshyamamrita Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardhana Purvarukamiva bandhana Vijormukshyamamrita Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardhana Purvarukamiva bandhana Vijormukshyamamrita Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardhana Purvarukamiva bandhana
Shiva is beyond the duality of male and female. Like on the worst day of my life where I felt so unlovable that I could kill, I had an experience of Lord Krishna. Nothing like an emotional space to, and the most striking thing about my darshan, my experience of being in the presence of Krishna, was that Krishna was androgynous. I'd never been with a person who was truly androgynous before. And that was the thing that struck me about Krishna's energy. And when I was a teenager, I had a picture of Shiva over my bed, not knowing who he was or whether he was male or female. Just the beauty and the charisma, the gift of grace of that beauty, had mesmerized me. So Shiva is usually often portrayed as Ardhanarishvara, half masculine, half feminine. Shiva rules tamas guna and is a personification of that aspect of the dynamics which underlie the dynamics of consciousness that underlie creation. So Shiva rules tamas guna, which rules the crystallization of consciousness into form. That Shiva rules our life here on earth. And the word Shiva means auspicious. And it's this incredible, amazing experience that each of us is having being in a body. It is just so amazing to be consciousness in a body. Throughout the wisdom of India, they say there's no dimension as profound as being on earth, because it's really only here on earth and the dimension of earth that you can work out your karma and achieve and work towards liberation. That there are certainly other dimensions that are more pleasurable, but this is the one place where you can evidently work through your karma. But I wanted to say one other thing about Shiva. Okay, so whenever we're talking about the powers of consciousness that underlie creation, we're always talking about being and becoming. So for Shiva, the masculine is bhava, being, and the feminine is bhavani, becoming. So there are many, many different forms that personify different qualities and different aspects of the feminine aspect of Shiva. There are the benign personifications like Sati, Parvati, Uma, Durga, and then there are the fierce personifications like our mother Kali here. We dedicate our efforts to a vision of a springtime of humanity, where all humanity makes a leap in consciousness and realizes the unity and divinity of all life, where we cherish our Mother Earth as our own dear mother and share with each other as brothers and sisters. Aho Matakwiasan for all our relations. And so it is.
And so it is.